Hui. Welcome to this Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting for the 5th of March 2025. I'd just like to remind everybody that the meeting is being live streamed, and just ask if you please turn your mobiles onto silent, please. If we are still going at 11, we will aim to take a break around then. To start off our day, I would just like to ask Councillor Lee to start us with a blessing, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As is my custom, this one is borrowed from Parliament. Almighty God, we give thanks for the blessings which have been bestowed on us. Laying aside all personal interests, we acknowledge the King and pray for guidance in our deliberations, that we may conduct the affairs of this committee with wisdom, justice, mercy and humility for the welfare and peace of Rotorua. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'd just like to also welcome those who are joining us online, and also to the media who are in the room. Good morning, Laura. And just I will call for now apologies, please. We have one from, yes, Councillor Maxwell. Thank you. I have apologies for lateness from Councillor Wang, and an apology from Councillor Kiriopa, who's not well today. She may join us via Zoom later on. And did you have one? Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. So Councillor Maxwell will be leaving the meeting just to attend a tangi, and will return afterwards. So thank you. Can I have ask for a mover and a seconder for the apologies be received, please? Thank you, Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? There appear to be none. We'll move on to item 4. There are no urgent items to my knowledge for the agenda today, but are there any minor matters to be discussed, councillors? Councillor Lee and then Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday, the people from central government in the water arena informed us that we're required to keep records of our water quality. I notice other councils, including the Western Bay Plenty District Council, publish this information on their website. I just wonder whether that could be arranged for our council. I'm particularly interested in getting some baseline figures.
Sorry, Rob, point of order.
What's your point of order, Councillor Wadu?
I don't see that as an urgent item. Doesn't fit the criteria.
It's more a minor matter, you're right. And
it's a minor matter.
Thank you, councillors. It is under minor matters, and I'm just listening to decide whether we actually discuss this now, or whether we get some further information from Stavros around that and get a report back to the next meeting.
So the gist is, before I was interrupted again, I would like some baseline figures published on our water quality prior to putting in the hydrofluorosilicic acid with whatever other contaminants may or may not be in there.
Thank you, councillor. Stavros, do you want to make any comments right now, or would you prefer to give some feedback? Yeah, I think Stavros will update us in the report, Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor O'Brien, you had a minor matter?
Oh, thank you. In interest of time, Madam Chair, I'll withdraw mine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No further minor matters. We will move on to the rest of the agenda. Item number 5 on page 6 of your agenda, councillors, is the confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting held on the 5th of February 2025 be confirmed as a true and correct record, please? Councillor Kai Fong. Any seconder? Mayor Tapsell, thank you. Any matters for correction?
Just a point of clarification, Madam Chair. Point 6 in the minutes record that Councillor O'Brien asked to make minor changes to the wording of his original notice of motion, and it was explained to him the procedure to change a notice of motion according to standing orders. I recall last week when we went into public excluded that we were told by the then chair that no amendments could be made to my notice of motion.
The process, as I understand it, and was explained by Mr. Keck on the day of the INE meeting, was that in agreement with the whole room, the councillors, the original notice of motion could be amended by the mover of the motion. Councillor O'Brien wanted to amend his motion, and so we then asked for the room to approve that amendment. The whole room unanimously approved, so we moved on. But once the motion is seconded, a notice of motion can't be amended.
Unless, of course, standing orders were set aside to ensure that a good decision was made on the proper basis.
That is probably at the discretion of the chair. I don't know whether I agree with that, but as I understand it, it's as I just stated it then. And that was the process that was followed in the council meeting that you're referring to.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So no other matters for clarification for the minutes? There appear to be none. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 6, councillors, is presentations, and today we have a presentation on the comprehensive stormwater consent. We're going to get an overview of this from Stavros. This is a really important piece of work for our district. It's going to span over 30 years. It sets forward a plan for how we're going to manage our stormwater and surface water management. It deals with water quality, flood mitigation, future growth of our city, so it's really important that we understand the consent itself, but also our responsibilities as the consent holders. So this will be quite a large presentation, but there will be the opportunity for you to ask questions and understand it fully so that we understand the importance and our responsibilities under this consent. So welcome, Stavros, and look forward to your presentation. Over to you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Morena Tatukatua. As follow-up from the Chair's early comments, I cannot impress strongly enough how important are the matters of foundation infrastructure. All of them are important to every aspiration the district's got with regards to economic growth, community well-being, environmental well-being, future potential and so on, and obviously the management of rainfall or stormwater management control is one of these main foundation infrastructure services the Council provides for our community. For context, I know we spoke about these elements before, but I would not be apologetic in reminding elected members the same things, because I think it's very important for everyone now and in the future to remember that Rotorua is blessed with a lot of climate conditions that generate a lot of rainfall. We receive about 3.5 billion cubic meters of average annual rainfall every year. The urban component of our district receives and requires management something in the region of 400 million cubic meters of stormwater a year. To give you context, 400 million cubic meters of stormwater is about half of the water that is contained into Lake Rotorua. So it's a large volume and body of water that is generated by a natural event called rainfall, and we are required to manage that. In relative comparison, our wastewater we generate is about 7.5 million cubic meters a year, and our drinking water supply is about 15 million cubic meters a year. So in context and magnitude, the stormwater we receive and the stormwater we have to manage, it's larger in many magnitudes older than those key foundation services. The district at this point in time will have an annual investment in stormwater in terms of core operational expenditure of about $9 million a year. Out of that $9 million a year, $2 million relates to services and staff. We've got about $400,000 dedicated to staff, my staff, and about $1.5 million that is spent into cleaning, maintenance, and activities. We do have about $4 million we dedicate generate by depreciation of our existing assets and would dedicate to renewals of these works. And there are another about $3 million that it's finance costs and general corporate indirect costs for the area, for the activity. So a total of about $9 million a year. So it's quite important to keep that in mind when we go through this, this discussion. If we can get to move. Okay. Okay. Now, the stormwater consent covers the APAN area. As I said, the APAN area generates about 400 million cubic meters a year, and its primary purpose is actually to mitigate the effects of quality flows and to manage the volumes of water after rainfall, and goes through the APAN sector and finds its way towards our waterways and lakes. These consents, which have been recently secured, and I'll talk about in a minute about the composition of the consents, it's superseding right now about 39 individual consents, and now we have it down to one single consent. The Resource Management Act required a consented approval towards management of the stormwater since 2001. We have launched our initial application back in 2001, but there has been a transitional period required, but there were a lot of regulatory changes in that period of time, and as a result of that, the final hearing for the consent was received and delivered in November 2024. So it's a product of 23 years of ongoing work to arrive at the stage we are at the moment. The commissioners have issued a decision last month. The resource consent now going forward has got a 35-year horizon in front of it. It's been subdivided into 7 catchments, and you can see that in clusters of colors to try to put them together. And instead of having 39 individual consents for individual outlets and so on, we will have one overarching comprehensive consent. Basically, we are entitled to manage stormwater in a way that meets quality and quantity standards, and we are entitled to do this on the basis of 7 catchments as you see them in front of you. The overarching objectives remain as always been, but now they have been further exaggerated or accentuated by the fact that we need to continue to take efforts to protect our environment. We need to protect our community from the flooding risks. We need to ensure that we're controlling contaminants that find their way through our waterways. Protect public and private infrastructure. And again, remember, we do have our own infrastructure, the public infrastructure, but the community and our economy moves along based on a lot of private infrastructure, telecommunications, gas supply, services, and so on. And obviously, we have a responsibility to protect not just the public infrastructure, but also the private infrastructure. And also need to be cognizant of the fact that climate change is constant, it's changing all the time, and we need to take in consideration in any current considerations for interventions, not only of what's happening today, but what is likely to happen in the next 30, 50, 100 years' time. And obviously, we do have a community-led responsibility to ensure that the community is aware of the risk and the benefits of stormwater management, and therefore it is an important job that this council has to continue to work with. The consent holder, in terms of our organization structure, is now the Water Services Manager, who is a member of the Infrastructure and Assets Group. He is responsible to ensure full compliance with the conditions of the consent, and that consent term expires in December 2059. One of the good things that came out of these deliberations in the last year or so with the commissioners, especially after our application, and spent some time indicating what we think our responsibilities are versus other parties, is that the commissioner made some very clear definitions and demarcations of responsibility. The commissioner said that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council are clearly responsible for the management of lake levels and the 7 streams in the urban area. The commentary from the Commissioner's decision highlights that high lake levels do impact on stormwater network performance. If you have very high lake levels, obviously you've got tailwater is pushing water back into the channels, where it originated. It's not easy for water to push through and mitigate and alleviate the risk to the urban side. High water levels in streams and artificial water courses also exacerbating flood risk, and I'll show some pictures later on. If the waterways and the streams are not well managed, if they're overgrown, if they're obstructed by trees, if they are obstructed by underslips and so on, it reduces the capacity of the channel to convey stormwater towards its final destination in the lake. Poor stream maintenance obviously exacerbates that stream capacity deficiency, and the Regional Council has the responsibility as part of the Upper Kaituna Catchment Control Scheme in terms of managed assets. So the Commissioner made some very clear distinction of the responsibilities of each party. A very brief sort of summary of the assets we've got into that cluster of activities we call stormwater. It comprises X number of kilometers of pipelines, open channels, manholes, pump stations, outlets, pollutant traps, attenuation ponds, and in recent times, 3 very large attenuation dams, which I'll come back to it in a minute. The combined value of all these sort of things at the moment stands about $300 million replacement value. The core responsibilities of this council is to manage a network that is getting a bit old and requires upgrading to maintain improved levels of service. I want to emphasize that when we say the age of the system, I do not mean that the pipes are too old. What I mean mainly is that the pipelines and the overland flow paths that were designed as the city grew and the urban sector grew over the years, for the last 100 years or so, pipes were designed and inserted into the ground under a certain design capacity conveyance over the times, which usually was no more than 1 in 2, 1 in 5, 1 in 10 year, storm event capability. Right now, we are, not just in Rotorua, but collectively around the country, because of the climate change, we are required to take into consideration when we renew and upgrade pipes and systems to actually design systems that have the combined effect of managing the 1 in a 100-year storm events. And that's what I mean, that our system needs to be gradually upgraded to that direction. And obviously, we do have at the moment a much heightened awareness about water quality. We understand that the urban environment and the rural environment and our activities and the economy and generate potential pollutants that reach our natural waterways, and obviously we will need to have high levels of standards and compliance requirements. So the level of service that we will embrace over the next 35 years and beyond, that would be on the basis of 1 in 100 years climate considered annual probability event. So we need to improve our stormwater quality and to minimize as much as far as possible contaminants from entering and leaving the stormwater network. Again, the region and especially our relationship with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and cognizant of the comments of the Commissioner, make it non-negotiable and actually an absolute necessity that we have to collaborate with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, because the Commissioner clearly delineated the responsibilities of this council versus the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Nature and the environment does not distinguish statutory responsibilities. Nature follows overland flow paths, pipelines, waterways, lakes, until the water ends where it's supposed to end, and therefore the overall stormwater network is a combination of our urban system and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council responsibilities. So an effective risk control depends on the efficiency of all systems that convey stormwater. So it's important for us to find ways to collaborate the best way possible and have a clear distinction about the functions of each organization, but those functions really need to work together comprehensively and to make sure that the outcome is the same. In terms of managing the current and anticipated quantity of stormwater generated by weather events, and again, I cannot emphasize strongly now that the best design assumptions are based on historical trends and data. We do have events that spikes into those trends. I'll give you an example. In 2 years ago, in year 22-23, instead of having an average of 3.5 billion cubic meters of rainfall for the year, we had in excess of 5 billion cubic meters. So it's almost double, the amount of rainfall. We had high lake levels in Rotorua, in Rotoehu, in Rotoiti, in Lake Rotorua. So these are spikes that go over and above our average trends. We need to be constantly alert and adaptive to climate change. And obviously, as we go forward, we need to be cognizant that the community really cannot afford to do the improvements all in one go. That's why we have long-term infrastructure strategy. That is why we have a long-term resource consent to that effect. And these improvements will take place gradually, but they need to be systematic, reliable, and consistent. We can't stop and start. Once you set up a plan, we need to keep going to adapt to the new circumstances and progressively improve your system. In order to address that, we have a master plan, a stormwater master plan. We started creating significant attenuation water retention dams. We have a long-term plan that relies heavily on the decisions and the wisdom and the judgment of elected members in the community to recognize that infrastructure is a long-term investment, and the long-term plan needs to reflect this kind of considerations. And also, we pursue collaboration with the Crown in terms of the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund to help us mitigate some of the immediate needs that we have in front of us. So the master plan basically identifies the areas of the urban sector that is most likely to experience urban growth, housing, and other economic developments. And you can see here we've got the areas of projected growth as part and parcel of our growth strategy that you have approved today. Now there are some details and peculiarities in that, but in overall terms, these are the major housing growth areas we anticipate over the next 30 years. And therefore, our infrastructure strategy and stormwater strategy and master plan need to respond to that to enable that growth to take place. Significant investments, and the challenging investments we've done in the last couple of years relates to the building of attenuation dams, the East and West Dam on above Morris Street, you can see in front of you there. Big projects, challenging projects, costly projects, and this project is now finished. In terms of its, of this construction phase, we're going through tidying up processes. But again, these attenuation dams will retain in excess of 250,000 cubic meters of water, which gives an opportunity to the system to drain towards the lake in a more controlled and risk-free way. We also built the Linton Park Dam, which again has got a capacity to detain and treat about in excess of 300,000 cubic meters of stormwater, especially in heavy rain event. It holds the water, it allows the downstream environment to drain more effectively, and also it performs both the Morris Street dams and the Linton Park dams also perform a quality control system, because sediments that washed into that, they'll be settled into the bottom of these dams, and we will have a regular maintenance regime to clean them up so that the dam's capacity conveyance systems like the Tamatea River Outlet, the Tamatea joining the Utuhina. Those things need to be widened and need to be sloped to minimize the erosion process. They need to have a riparian planting to that, which achieves two things. It improves the conveyance capacity of the stormwater system, but also improves the water quality as we go through our improvement processes. I'm stuck again now. Thank you. Again, this is the outlets of the lower Utuhina River, downstream from Lake Road. Remind the elected members that the downstream from Lake Road, this is a managed Upper Kaituna assets of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. You can see the color of the water. The color of the water is brown, and it's brown because there's a lot of sedimentation cut through underslips and erosion on the sides of the streams upstream. And this is the river mouth, of the Utuhina that discharges into the lake. So if lake levels are high, excessively high, that outlet cannot discharge into the lake, and it creates tailwater pushing backwards. And this is a cascading effect, going all the way to our residential areas. In order to address those currently known and future anticipated interventions to improve our stormwater management, we have the what we call the IAF project. And of course, the IAF project is a euphemism to identify the way of funding for that. We get a significant funding from the Crown Infrastructure to do that work, or KO. We have identified the master plan, which has been presented to this council back in March, April last year. It identifies all the future works we will be doing in the catchment to mitigate, attenuate, improve conveyance, and reduce the floods and quality water risks arising from stormwater management. Again, I will just reiterate here that the significant risks to this undertaking in terms of stormwater management are really the conveyance capacity of our rivers, the Utuhina, Makakahi, Otamatia, the lower end, to the lake, our pipe and overland flow path networks. We also recognize that this is a caldera. We live in a caldera. We live around the edges of a bowl, and all the stormwater needs to go towards, to the lake. We have climate change. We need to recognize that. And again, there's a lot of discussion. And from engineering perspective, we try to make assumptions. There's a lot of modeling. There's a lot of predictive modeling that takes place. And to be honest, the reality that climate change effects are really an assumption that as you go into the future, the uncertainty grows exponentially, because the longer you go into the future, the higher the uncertainty. So to the best of our ability, we have to make decisions now on the basis of information we have, and we are able to extrapolate. We have the low-lying areas that obviously are always going to be prone to increased flood risk, and that's why we need to work with our communities to make them aware of that. There's no point of people wanting to live in a low-lying area, but they expect to be 100% protected for flooding events. It's just, if money was not a consideration, there's always going to be, remedial works to be done. One can look into Netherlands and the dams and the dikes over there. Questions that, you need significant amounts of money to actually protect, from events like that. If we do have the lower Utuhina River and the current capacity, the initial statements and targets for the Upper Kaituna Asset Management Plan of the Regional Council was to provide a conveyance capacity of 1 in a 100-year event. The current state of the lower Utuhina, to the best of our modeling assessment we've done, it only serves a 1 in 5 to 10 year event. We have identified some potential improvements to it, and that's why I want to talk to my colleagues in the Bay of Plenty Regional Council next week, and which could further improve that capacity from 5 to 10 years to 15 to 30 years. It's not ideal, but perhaps might be the best we can achieve in the short term. But we do want the Regional Council to actually be a willing and constructive and genuine party to this, to these undertakings. So we're going to have these conversations. There's a lot of technical work and an exchange of views to be given in the meantime, but this is the challenges and the risks we are facing. Again, like any system, it's all no good if you build it and you stop maintaining it. You've got maintenance responsibilities. We need to have an asset management planning as part of the resource consent. We clearly identified and where the assets are, what the mapping, what the data are about, their capacity, conveyance capacity, their structures capacity. We need to maintain our built-up detention ponds to provide at least 75% of their design capacity. We need to, and I go back to Councillor Lee's question earlier, as part of these resource consents, we really need to establish, maintain, and analyze a system of sampling and analyzing sediments from our detention treatment systems and the ponds, and understand what contaminants flow into the system. And once we understand that, we need to do reverse tracing to find out what the potential source of that and try to mitigate them. And also, where we have sediments settling into the detention ponds, we need to have a regular and systematic approach of cleaning that sediment and taking them away into appropriate landfills and disposal facilities. Excuse me. The rural sector is not really free of scrutiny. The rural sector generates contaminants like sediments, nutrients, E. coli from animals. Many times when we test the waterways in our urban side, we find that there are E. coli traces in there, but most of the times are E. coli that are product of animals or the result of bird feces. So it's not very often that we have human E. coli in our waterways. There are some issues that we need to continue to work on. We have greenfield developments, that the management of sedimentation for these greenfield developments is the responsibility of the Auckland Regional Council to manage the consents through consents. We need to work with the Regional Council to identify and report pollution incidents on the basis of a standard of water quality and allowable contaminants into the system, and really work with the Auckland Regional Council to interrogate to say what happened, why it happened, what can be done to fix it. We need to sort of ensure that our infill development, to the best of our ability, does not generate additional sediments. Industrial sites are a significant risk to waterways pollution, and I'll talk a bit later about what we're going to do about it. But industrial sites have sediments that has been contaminated by whatever happens on industrial site, might be diesel, might be chemicals, might be paint, other things like that. That once they mix with the ground, they wash into the stormwater system and find their way into waterways and from there to the lake. And obviously, our wastewater network is a potential source of contamination through E. coli, through pipe bursts, overflows, cross connections of private pipes, into the stormwater system, and obviously the natural events. Again, that just highlights that for every development, there have to be a significant effort to manage the effects of development. There are site developments, there are earthworks, there are sedimentation controls, and so on. And obviously, it will become a responsibility jointly with the Regional Council when we consider the resource consent for greenfield developments to make sure that we have the appropriate systems of control to manage pollutants from escaping and finding their way into our system. Industrial, as I said earlier, this just highlights the challenge of industrial sites. The current proposal at the moment between us and the Regional Council is that industrial, because we are the owners of the stormwater system, if you are the owner of industrial site, you need to get a license from the council to discharge stormwater into the system. And in order for us to do good diligence and due diligence to our responsibilities as a consent holder, we need to discuss with the industrial site owner what are the potential risks of the industrial site, what he can do to contain those risks, and work with them to make sure that we do not have an outcome where there are no control systems on the industrial site, and the general ratepayer has to carry out the risk of responding to pollution. So that's the system that the license system we're going to have, and we'll work to make sure that our bylaw that control that system is appropriate and fit for purpose for the next 35 years. We will have these discussions. We have identified about 200 sites in the Rotorua area that potentially what we call high risk. We're having ongoing conversations with these industrial site holders. The approach you need to take is twofold. It needs to have an education approach which says what can be done, what's your responsibilities, what are the public's responsibilities. The whole idea is to avoid having to respond to an incident by not allowing that incident to be created in the first place. And obviously, we're going to have a responsibility in the events where something falls through the cracks to investigate and monitor and identify any sources of pollutions. Quality monitoring. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Address Councillor Lee, I'm sorry, I'll just pass it to you again, is that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council has a systematic water quality monitoring of streams and rivers and the lake. That's their responsibility. And obviously, with the new resource consents, we really need to work with the regional council and ourselves to undertake a systematic water quality plan and investigations, which includes water, sediment contaminants, macrovertebrates. We need to identify trigger levels and actions, if those are allowable contaminants are into water. Just to be clear, there are always going to be contaminants in open water sources. Contamination comes from just running from the roof of a house, from the surface of the road, from the roof of your car, from the residual paints, of our houses, from litter we discharge, from animals, from natural events like geothermal activity. The point is that the water quality plan and the resource concern identifies water quality standards and says contaminants exceeding that level are not allowed. And therefore we need to find out ways to do it. And probably I'll talk a little bit about the fluoridation at a later stage. We are required to develop that water quality plan over the next 12 months and submit it to the consent to the regulatory body with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Then we're going to have a 3-yearly independent review and monitoring these results. Now, again, in response to the question of Councillor Lee earlier, Madam Chair, that water quality plan will require us to have a more systematic and enhanced way of monitoring water quality, and the results of that water quality needs to be made public. So we need to find a way in our websites to make that public and incorporate that result with the investigation the Bay of Plenty Regional Council is doing. And obviously, part of the water quality plan is to identify together with the appropriate Manawhenua cultural indicators, and this will be identified in the catchment management plan processes. We need to develop gradually 7 catchment management plans, and each catchment management plan will be a microcosm of the overall district. So each catchment management plan will have some uniqueness, some unique characteristics, and each management plan will be required to identify water quality improvement processes, issues specific to each catchment, to identify mitigation options for the issues identified, flood risk modeling, and obviously ongoing maintenance plans and education programs. So it's a long-term process, it's a 35-year process, but gradually we work through that to address them as they progress. Again, this is just development of how the parameters of developing the catchment management plan, and we do hope to start that work within the next 6 to 12 months to give effect to the resource consent requirements. It needs to be done in consultation both with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and the relevant iwi. We will be seeking mandated iwis who are responsible for each management plan area to help us formalize and create an engagement process to create these management plans and eventually develop all catchment management plans to the satisfaction of the concerns requirements. We need to continue to enable growth through greenfield developments and infield development, and obviously the areas where discharges are directly into our own network are managed by ourselves. Where discharges are directly into rivers and other waterways, that's the responsibility of the Plenty Regional Council to consider and issue the consents. We have all these recording and reporting requirements as part of the consent. We need to identify what's our water quality plan, monitoring results, the contaminant investigations, an updated stormwater asset register, the summary of stormwater network upgrades, and the records of all inspections and maintenance works. So that's a systematic and disciplined way of improving our stormwater system for the future. So you know, we are appealing one condition of that resource consent, and that condition, just in simple terms, said that if you have if you create a new stormwater conveyance system through pipes or whatever, you need to be able to achieve the 1 in 100 year capacity. And you think that's quite doable in some areas where we have greenfield development, no problem with it. But in areas where the medium density district plan requirements, might require densification works, if your pipeline or the system you develop, you design cannot be the 1 in 100 year, we cannot abandon that work, if you can only achieve 1 in 90 years, for example. The resource consent as it was written, it requires us either to meet the 1 in 100 year protection or abandon it, And the answer, we think that is surely not in line with the expectations of the resource consent, because if you have, for example, 100 houses in a small catchment area, you can improve the stormwater management to 90 of these houses, and there is some inability to address all 100 houses. You cannot abandon the project. We will not have a project that is not consented simply because 10% of your houses cannot be addressed. Then we thought that was a discrepancy in the consent, and we are appealing that provision to make sure that we have a practical and realistic way of meeting that requirement. Now, by our session, the Development Regional Council, we're starting that meeting as from Monday. We're going to do a big tour on the site, and over the next 3 months, we'll work out to address that discrepancy, or that we think it's an error in the resource consent decision, and we want to make sure that the Regional Council and ourselves are on the same wavelength in that respect. Now, what does that mean? That means that we have to dedicate some resourcing to this consent. Some of the resourcing, as we targeted to achieve the issues you said, is existing staff. We repurpose some of their work, but it's quite important for elected members to understand, to achieve the outcomes of the resource consent, it doesn't happen by osmosis. You need to dedicate the resource to that. We anticipate to make sure that we have at least one FTE dedicated to operational requirements in terms of monitoring service levels on the waterways and the pipelines, maintenance activities, and so on. We're going to have we need to pay attention to developing the catchment management plans. Someone has to be the owner of the catchment management plans, so to talk to the community, talk to iwi, make sure that everybody is happy with the provisions of the catchment management plans. We need to have a robust system, an easy system to provide licensing to high-risk sites, and obviously we have an ongoing risk assessment of various segments of our stormwater system. Though obviously gradually there will be, as we build, for example, the attenuation dams. Every 5 years or so, we have to remove the sediment, and obviously our long-term plan and our infrastructure strategy as reviewed, we will make provision for the operational costs of meeting those requirements for monitoring, reporting, cleaning sediments, and monitoring structural integrity of our systems. And gradually our current investment in stormwater will change in profile as our long-term plan gets developed. So in conclusion, the comprehensive stormwater consent amalgamates all existing stormwater consents. It gives us a target and a framework for the next 35 years. It does incorporate higher standards, in terms of water quality and quantity, and requires a systematic improvement to manage both quantity and quality of the systems. And obviously, by addressing it through on a catchment basis, it gives the local community an opportunity to participate in the catchment management plan and actually have an ownership, of the outcomes of those, outcomes. That's me. Thank you. I'm happy to take any question, Madam Chair, if you have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Stavros. Really great presentation and illustration of the big piece of work that's going to happen going forward over the next 30 years in total. But yes, just at the 200 sites that are high risk, plus all of the monitoring requirements and the catchment plans, it's going to be a big piece of work. So thank you for sharing that today. Questions from the councillors? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you for your report. Stavros, just a technical question for the staff. This report was in Stella last night. It seems to not be there now.
Sorry, Councillor, you're saying you can't find the report?
No, it's not in mine. I've got
presentation?
There was 5, now there's only 4 papers. I don't know why. Okay, move on.
We'll check into that for you, sorry.
Thank you. So just with regards to the dams, Linton Park and the Morey Street dams, they're now complete? So they haven't been tested yet, have they, with a major event?
No, they're structurally complete. We're going through the phases of what we call maintenance period of these contracts, practical certificates for completion and so on. And, I'm not going to lie to you, these are major projects. They've got some challenges in terms of our interaction with the contractors and working through all these issues. But in terms of the testing, well, those dams are designed to have a certain capacity for the 1-in-100-year nested storm event, so we haven't
Fingers
needed
crossed.
them to be used yet.
Right. So if this winter is maybe one of those gets thrown up and they hold the line, and then you have the opportunity to see how much sediment, etc., that's left over, will that help you in your budget plans for determining, okay, we need to put a budget aside for maintenance of these dams based on this evidence that we've got?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, infrastructure has to make some reasonable and educated and informed predictions of what it needs now in the next 50, 100 years. We've got enough information about standards for maintenance and so on, and obviously our long-term plan will gradually be updated to that. As I said to you yesterday when we were doing the local water done well modelling, financial modelling, we have included these elements into that modelling to help us identify where we are viable, and we are viable under that DIA program as it is at the moment. So we gradually started anticipating those systematic maintenance and routine maintenance and inspection works to be done. Yeah.
Thank you. And just a few more questions, if I may. One thing I did notice was that Nongataho areas doesn't seem to be included in this. Well, why is that?
Oh, it is included. It's one of the catchments.
Okay. Because obviously there's major issues with the Nongataho stream, and our partners with Bay of Plenty Regional Council have a lot to do with that. And talking about them going further on, you're talking about the full-time employees, and then we've got all of the other aspects that this will be a fairly costly exercise as we go through it. Are they the consenting authority for this?
Yes, the Regional Council is the consenting authority, but they have assigned an independent commissioner to review our consent application. So
if we are working together, will they be co-funding this as well as making decisions?
Well, the Regional Council has to fund the areas they're responsible for. As I said, the Commissioner made it very clear to all of us that who is responsible for what part. And waterways, streams, lakes, these are the Bay of Plenty Regional Council responsibility. And that's why we're having this site tour on Monday to actually confirm and make it very clear that we are partners to managing a large system. There are subsystems, you are responsible for that, we are responsible for that. So I would not expect that partnership to start not being responsive to our individual functions and responsibilities.
And just one last question, thank you for that. The appeal, you talked about a project, just to be a bit more specific around that for some clarity. If I'm developer A, I decide I've got an opportunity to do some infill in a city, a suburb, and I think I can intensify that particular area, but the stormwater is not up to it, and won't be able to be up to it without serious investment. Would that then force that project to be abandoned?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, if you cannot achieve 100% compliance to mitigate the 1 in 100-year event, the consent condition is written at the moment, it will lead you to say you cannot consent that intensification work. And we say that's surely not as what intended, because basically if you do that, you will stymie any potential for growth and opportunity there. And we're going back to the Commission and say we're not happy with that, because yes, we all work, we want to achieve the 1 in 100, but if this development will create, I'll just use the number of my head, 50 new houses, for example, okay? And in the periphery of that, it cannot guarantee compliance with the 1 in 100-year capacity improvement to everything around there, but 5% it can. That's surely, illogical, to do that. And that's why we're appealing it.
Thank you. And my last question is with regards to, I think it was Minister Bishop announced earlier in the week, that the funding for roads, stormwater, etc., that's currently, a lot of that is on us before a project is done, that's all going to be the responsibility of a developer now. Is that how I read it? And will that impact this?
No, that's not. No, I think if you have a greenfield development, the greenfield developer creates a network, they put the road in, the utilities and so on, and when the project is finished and is certified, those assets are vested to the council, and the council becomes the ongoing steward of these projects in perpetuity, or for how many years it could not to be done. I think what the minister was referring to is that the system of each council developing its own system of development contributions is not standardized into the country, and they're thinking about establish some kind of model that everybody will be very clear that there has to be a developer levy, instead of doing a contribution that pays for the effects of these new developments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I have questions from Councillor Brown, then Metapsel.
Thank you, Chair. Stavros, have you given any thought to the prioritisation of any catchments for the catchment management plans?
Yeah, at the moment we are thinking about starting from Godaha as a priority one.
Perfect.
So, but we will talk to the community and the regional council to make sure we're on the same wavelength there.
Yeah, good. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and go to Metapsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I just had a question. Sorry, I just quickly pull it up. I just had a question regarding the water quality and also the contaminant investigations, and whether microplastics are also part of that. I just couldn't see it clearly in here. However, unfortunately, in recent findings, we have found that Lake Rotorua has a high amount of microplastics when compared to other lakes.
Two responses to that, Your Worship. One, I think we talked about yesterday, the development national water standards, freshwater standards. And obviously that is something that we're waiting for the national standards to be developed. But there's also microplastics in general are arising from our wastewater system. Laundries and kitchen washing and showers and all these bits and pieces. So our treatment plant will be filtering these microplastics. Now Lake Rotorua has a historical historical level of microplastics. I'm not entirely sure I would agree that it is at a level that is worrying some, but we do have a process of plastics in general that are thrown away by individuals, plastic bags, containers that find their way into the waterways, they break under the UV influence, they break up in the water and become microplastics in the waterways and the receiving environment. Now, as part and parcel of the stormwater consent, we need to be thinking about debris arresters, for all the pipes that discharge into waterways, and cleaning processes, monitoring the water quality, and identifying possible ways of reducing that incident. The majority of microplastics in our waterways, they did not start as microplastics. They start as plastics that break up as they get affected by the weather. So if we stop them from entering the water system in the first place, we'll reduce the microplastics in that respect.
Yes, thank you. I think that will be an ongoing issue in future that our community should be aware of and not get complacent on. And just my final question, in one of the slides I saw greenfield development excluded, and I just wanted to question that and check what that means, because we have done some great and significant work alongside Bay Plenty Regional Council for the future development strategy. And while this work is important, I'm also mindful that we want to encourage development, not prevent it. And in particular, from a Bay Plenty Regional Council, I just am concerned if, how do I put it, everybody has to play their part. So developers need to ensure that the stormwater is being held on site, will continue to invest in infrastructure. But as the Bay Plenty Regional Council has just been confirmed as the one responsible for management of lake levels and the 7 streams, I'd also want reassurance that new development isn't being prevented because one of those parties, in particular the Regional Council, is not fulfilling their duties to keep streams flowing as good as possible, and Ngongataha is one that comes to mind.
You're absolutely right, and that's why we have noted that the system is a system, and the system is only as good as all its parts are contributing to that. And that's the whole point of us acknowledging and actually saluting the Commissioner's finding, because that gives some clear demarcation of responsibilities or parts of the system, and that's why we're having a conversation with the Regional Council starting on Monday to tour and have a look at it. JP will also tell you that our future development strategy, growth strategy, is a shared objective of the Regional Council. So an objective mind would say if two parties got clear alignment of understanding of their functions and responsibilities, got shared objectives they want to achieve, then you would all think that they will work together constructively to pursue those goals.
So if I can add to you, Madam Chair, I think that it's important to note, though, that this consent doesn't address any future development. So whilst it's called a comprehensive stormwater consent, it's not comprehensive that it addresses any future development that isn't existing. So to answer the question about whether further consents will be required by developers, yes, they will. Yeah. And this consent doesn't give us assurance that the Regional Council will take an enabling role in that development. That needs to be an ongoing and further and future and a persistent conversation with the Regional Council that we are conducting productively and collaboratively, but the consent doesn't give us any assurance about those outcomes.
Yeah, I think the Chief Executive is absolutely right. This is not a blank check, blank license or anything. There will be controls and systems instead of greenfield development, and the Regional Council will issue the parameters of their conditions of the concerns. I think what the Mayor was alluding to is that we don't want these condition consents to be constrained by downstream lack of capacity, which is outside our control. I think that's questions.
Thank you. Now I have questions from Councillor Lee, then Councillor O'Brien. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Stavros, let's see if we can finish off this conversation about drinking water quality. So, Councillor Patterson's research tells us that the rock that will be used to create the hydrofluorosilicic acid is imported from Morocco. It's then treated with sulfuric acid at plants such as the Balance plant at Mount Maunganui. So that will be the the material that's captured in the scrubbers by water
Councillor-
and put into our drinking
Point
water.
of order, Madam Chair.
Councillor,
So,
excuse me, there's a point of order. Thank you. What's your point of order?
Sorry, relevance, I thought we were talking about
Yeah.
stormwater.
Thank you. I was just actually going to ask Councillor
With
to
respect.
get to the stormwater part of the question, if that's possible.
well, actually, my question doesn't pertain to stormwater, it pertains to drinking water. That was the question that I attempted to raise at the start of the meeting.
Well, this is probably not the right place to raise it
Well, you
necessarily,
just
unless
told me-
Stavros wants to add something.
You just told me at the start of the meeting to raise it during Stavros's meeting, Madam Chair.
Just very quickly, if you recall, thank you, Mr.
I haven't finished asking my
Oh,
question.
sorry, okay.
How do you want to deal with this, Madam Chair?
I think that I actually assumed that you were talking about runoff.
No, drinking water.
Okay, well, maybe this is not part of this discussion then. And maybe you need to ask the question a bit later.
Is there another opportunity coming up in the meeting later?
Not necessarily. Listen, I think perhaps we'll save your question into the end. I'll move on to Councillor O'Brien and we'll come back.
Well, I do have another question for Stavros.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. So, pertaining to the Utahina River mouth, we had a speaker at the public forum last week who was requesting that we attend to that matter. I think you were planning on attending to the dredging of the opening of the mouth of the Utahina stream. Last I heard, we'd run into difficulties with the regional council. Are you able to give us an update on whether or not dredging is able to go ahead there, and if not, why not?
I will stay clear of the word dredging. My goal is to improve the capacity of the lower Utahina, conveyance capacity. Whether it's dredging or widening or do some other things, it's a different story. The presentation we had from a member of the Hinimutu group there, what they have asked for is that the lagoon, Porenga lagoon, would like to open it into the lake so it can get fresh water replenishment. When we meet with the regional council officers on Monday, we intend to be down to Hinimutu and have this conversation with them again.
So is there any obstacle being put in front of us by the regional council?
No, the submitter sought support from this council towards their effort to do that, some work in that area. The regional council said, we're not objecting to that. We just have to meet certain risk management requirements, the geothermal activity, people working in on the edges of the lake and so on. So you have to put a management plan to that effect. But again, when I will meet with the regional council officers this coming Monday, that's one of the components we will talk about. The regional council is not objecting to it. They're not procrastinating. They're not actually against it. What they say, well, we need to see a work plan, because obviously, there's got to be some risk management approaches to that plan. You can't just put a digger in there, for example, and start clearing material. You need to think about the potential risks, and that plan has not been produced yet.
Right,
so if I can just add to that, sorry, Councillor Lee, is rather than having our staff answer for the regional council, we're actually trying to work out a session whereby we have regional council staff here, so that councillors can also direct questions to them. So by all means, continue with the questioning, but also be assured that we're bringing that to you so that you can ask these questions directly to the regional council.
Thank you. So, is what you've just described different and separate from what was previously proposed in relation to the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund with a major dredging project?
Yeah, I think the Lower Utahina capacity improvement we've talked about is a channel of the Utahina. There is a bay near the church, near the Rupa there, which it's been over the years sedimentation from the lake closed it off, and the water doesn't flow in and out of that. And that's what the submission from the member of the...
Okay, so what's the status of the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund aspect of...
Well, that is why we need to agree with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council a joint approach to that, because the IAF would not agree to dedicate IAF money to that unless we've got the owner of the stream, which is the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, agreeing to participate into that and actually carry their own responsibilities. We don't want the Rotorua Lakes Council, even though we're getting potentially some Crown funding to that, we don't want the Rotorua Lakes Council actually to pay for the responsibilities of another body. At the very least, we need to have an agreement on how we're going to progress with it.
And there's no agreement from the Regional Council at this point?
Well, that's why we're meeting with our Monday, Councillor.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien and then Councillor Waru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, thank you, Stavros, for your very comprehensive and informative report. Very helpful. Just to follow on from Mayor Tapsel's comments, are you or the CE in a position, so given the comments, I won't say criticism, the comments made by the Commissioner in regards to stream maintenance, are you or in a position to state, given the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's LTP program of works, are we satisfied that there's enough work being done to address those criticisms by Regional Council? Or is that something for discussion moving for the next 3 years?
Well, I would say only two things to that. I think the 2019 independent review of the Nogodaha flood incident identified a number of flow-on actions. One of them was and remains a systematic. The importance of a systematic, reliable maintenance of waterways, channels, streams, call it maintenance. The Commissioner actually echoed that again and says, well, waterways are an integral part of good stormwater management and therefore need to be maintained systematically and reliably. I'm not aware that the Regional Council will have an objection to doing the function they are supposed to be doing. So we'll have a conversation with them on Monday and ask, and we'll work, with them to say, okay, how can we work together on that? Because if you're going to maintain, for argument's sake, a automatia waterway, removing underslips and trees and so on, we need to work together with them because we've got our own discharge pipelines that are going into the automatia, and we need to work together on that. So I would hope there's no ambiguity in there who is responsible to do what. If there's funding issues for that, then the Regional Council will make their own funding provisions for that, as we do our own funding provisions for our long-term plan for our maintenance of our own system, our airport system. So that's the objective.
Thank you, because I'm finding it hard to reconcile stream maintenance with their comments around, we don't do dredging, and also activities around reducing their lakes activity targeted rate. So I'm just wondering if you obviously would be in a position to say, well, yes, looking at their LTP, which I understand won't be amended, is there a strong enough works program in your opinion, if you're happy to provide one? If you're not, I understand. But do you think that there's an adequate works program by Regional Council?
Well, I haven't seen it today, and that's the whole point. That's why we're talking with the Regional Council starting from Monday, saying we've got a consent at the moment. The consent is very clear what we need to do. We will be doing that. You need to do that. Is your funding arrangement in place, to allow you to do that? If I have a concern, I'll go back to them and tell them I have a concern that you're not investing enough in that.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In addition, I think JP would like to add some comments as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just probably to one of the topics that Stavros and I need to raise when we talk to the Regional Council is obviously our community, our urban areas contributing to the Kaituna targeted rate. So the Kaituna has a work program or a management plan with a number of projects involved in it, obviously that our community is being levied to contribute to. So the issues you've raised are part of that, understanding what that Kaituna program is and our component component of the Upper Kaituna element of it. So there is a regional council funding mechanism, which they currently levy across our urban ratepayers, and that goes into that management plan. So that's where that program is identified and then carried forward into the LTP. So I think what Stavros has touched on is the critical conversation we now have to match program funding, which already exists, to those consent requirements.
Thank you, JP. I'll move now for a question from Councillor Waru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā koe, Stavros, thank you for your report. Comprehensive as always. Just wanted to ask, touching on what Councillor Lee talked about around the Utahina there, and I'm just trying to figure out, you mentioned that regional council said we have to have a plan of some sort. What is their plan? Do our plans have to align with theirs? Or how is it working?
Well, I think the regional councils responded to the applicant, to the community, I think Frederick, along the line from the regulatory, with a regulatory hat. You have to get a consent to do work into a water body. That is their responsibility, their consent. And they say, we're not objecting to that, but we need to see a management plan, how you're going to do that work, okay, to give you consent for that. When it comes to the Utahina channel itself, the regional council has got a dual function. They've got a regulatory function, but also got an operational responsibility function. So, we need to talk with the regional council and say, well, if this is your operational responsibility, but also you are the regulator for that, let's work together and see how you're going to discharge your operational responsibilities while at the same time you meet your regulatory responsibilities. So their response to the regional council is, well, we have the same thing too. We are a regulator for many activities, but also operator. When I want to do something that conflicts with our district plan, our district plan planners would tell me, well, you have to apply for a consent to do that. So we do that all the time. So it's not different to that. The point is that the regional council's response today has been from the regulatory function, but not from the operational function. So we need to see what they respond to the operational side.
Thank you, Stavros. I just asked that because I know that many plans have been given for consideration to the regional council and by different groups within Ohenumutu and others too, Waititi and Nohoke, and they seem to have the same answer. I was like, let's look at a plan and see how we can do so. Maybe that's something that needs to be brought to their attention, that this isn't the first rodeo.
Yeah, I think it was quite helpful, at the presentation that Councillor Kevin Winters, Laia Thurston and Tataru White were present at the presentation. So, we'll see how it progresses from there.
Thank you, Stavros. Kia ora.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing more about that. Any further questions, Councillor Maxwell?
First of all, I won't elaborate, talk too long on what has just come up, but I do appreciate what Councillor Lee and Councillor Waru have talked about with our issues in Ohenumutu and Utahina and with the regional council. But just referring, our CEO touched on, maybe we can, that we would be talking to their staff and various things. And I was just wondering, I think we have an arranged meeting where our councillors are meeting with their councillors soon. Maybe that might be the better opportunity. But I do appreciate what's been said earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It is indeed another opportunity. And another question from Councillor Waru.
Thank you for your indulgence and your kind heart, Madam Chair. Just wanted to ask, I was meant to ask before, sorry. The master plan you were talking about here that you just presented on, and after our CE Andrew explained that around the Greenfield new developments, there's no provision in there for those new things. How do we get around that? Because things do pop up out of our control, and then we're left with a decision. Oh, now we have to do this now, and we have to chop and change things and use whatever resource we have at the time. If something else misses out. So are there provisions within our own policies, I suppose, that cover those kind of things?
I think I might just clarify my comments before Stavros and say what I was trying to indicate is that whilst we call this a comprehensive stormwater consent, and whilst the FDS is a document that was jointly done with the Regional Council and endorsed by them, it doesn't automatically mean that all the development areas in the FDS have been given regulatory clearance from a stormwater development perspective through this consent. So when those areas come online and private developers put forward their plans, they will still have to go through the regulatory step of applying for stormwater consents. That is not granted by virtue of this comprehensive consent. And I'll leave Stavros to add anything further if he wishes.
Yeah, I think my chief executive is right. For greenfield development, a greenfield development needs to meet a whole range of requirements, both compliance with the district plan, but also engineering conditions, earthworks management, and discharges, of a resultant earthworks into the urban stormwater system or directly into the waterway. If it's directly into the waterway, that's the responsibility of the regional council. Okay? If it is discharging into our own stormwater, then it's our own engineering conditions, to enable. But it doesn't offset the need for them to get a consent for a whole variety of other compliance, issues. Same way we've specified conditions for when developing their sewage system, in there, or the water supply system or roading system. We give them conditions, to comply with. But it's not a blanket check, You've got to comply with these conditions before you actually connect and vest these assets back to the council.
So then we have more control over that.
Yeah.
Thank you. It does make more sense that way. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, and just like to round up that conversation around stormwater and the management of it. Thank you very much, Stavros, for answering our questions. Before you just head away, I just wondered if we could bounce back to Councillor Lee's initial question that you raised at the beginning of the meeting, which was around the baseline numbers of chemicals in the water, and you want to know if we could be provided with baseline numbers. Is that correct?
Yes, if I could finish asking my question, that would be lovely. But yes, so what we're not putting into the drinking water is medical grade sodium fluoride. We're putting industrial grade hydrofluorosilicic acid, which there is concern in the community among some experts that together with, all the way from Morocco, together with this, the superphosphate, arsenic, lead, mercury and calcium are likely to be coming into the water as well. So what I would like to see, Madam Chair, is some baseline measurements of those and other toxic substances before we start fluoridating, if that's what's going to happen, so that we can see how those other toxic substances are affected by the addition of the hydrofluorosilicic acid industrial grade, and also in line with other councils have that information published on our website. So I guess the first question is, do we have this data already and if not, can we get some baseline measurements of that done?
I'll leave that to Stavros to answer if you can, Stavros.
You've heard the chief executive of the water quality regulator, Mr. Tay. Whatever we're going to do with our drinking water, it needs to continue to adhere to the standards specified of drinking water standards. Those standards says you should not have more than X, Y, Z, in your water supply. Now, are you saying, and I'm strongly not recommending, obviously, we are really working very hard to meet those drinking water standards for the last 8 years or so, okay? I would not recommend that this council establish its own drinking water standards. because I would recommend against us setting our own drinking water standards when we have to comply with national drinking water standards already. So I would not recommend that, to take place.
Thank you, Stavros, and I'll just pass to the CE for further comments, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in the interest of making sure we don't misunderstand the question, I'd extend an invitation to work with me so that I can understand your query, particularly in relation to if other councils are already doing disclosures of certain elements of the quality of drinking water. Very happy to understand those more clearly with you not in a council meeting, so that I can be able to provide you with a response to them. Would you?
Sure. Just in response to Stavros's question, I'm not suggesting that Rotorua, our council, adopts its own water standards. I'm just talking about getting bench lines of our current water, which is the best tasting drinking water in New Zealand. And fair enough, we're a little bit protective and jealous of that, and so we should be. So let's find out what our water actually is like, as far as those other contaminants which may also be coming with the hydrofluorosilicic acid.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question and your background material, and for Stavros's answer about the good quality of our water already and the standards that we adhere to. And I believe that you've had the invitation to work with CE Andrew further on that. So thank you. Thank you. Councillor Patterson, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just carrying on from Councillor Lee's line of questioning, didn't we have to fill out some kind of application to win the Best Drinking Water Award sponsored by Ixom, who's one of the major chemical producers in New Zealand? We must have had to supply them with something. Surely we could have a copy of that.
Through you, Madam Chair. So it was done at the time under Infracore, so I need to see if I can retrieve that information from staff.
It was a taste award.
Yeah. So I don't. What I'm trying to say is I don't know what was in that application. I certainly didn't sign it off, so I don't have access to it. We can look into it, and if there is anything more subjective than taste, then share that information.
Bye-bye, thank you.
And always improve the taste. So lots of chemicals can put it in to make it more sweeter.
We will provide further information to you, Councillor, on what the actual award was for and any further details that we can find out for you, and give that to the rest of the councillors also. Thank you, Stavros, very much for your presentation this morning. Thank you. Yes, I was just thinking maybe this would be time to take a break for 15 minutes or so. And we will return back at about 11:15, councillors. And Metapsa would just like to say something before we close.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, and all jokes aside, I think we're starting to delve into a level of detail that's really not strategic or necessary at council level. So while I appreciate that there's an area, an interest of concern for some councillors, I don't think it's necessary to be bringing that sort of level of detail and at times conspiracy theories to the table. But happy for it to still be emailed directly to the councillors concerned. I just want to make sure we're staying focused on what's important.
Thank you, Mayor Tapsell. I'll take on board that. Thank you, councillors. We will break for 15 minutes and see you at 11:15. Thank you. Just bring the meeting back to order. Thank you for that break. Appreciate that. We'll get back into our agenda. We're at number 7, staff reports, on page 15 of your agenda, councillors. I'd ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report, Major Capital Projects Progress Report for January-February 2025. Please be received. Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Seconded by Councillor Waru. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. And this morning we have Thomas and Will to run through a presentation for us on the museum construction progress update. I'll hand it over to you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. First of all, I'll just take the rest of the report as read. As the report kind of outlines, we are working through the transitioning of the other projects, and we hope to have, hopefully next month, more of the stormwater and also the sewerage activities in a similar format to the museum. We just want to spend a little bit of time actually just sharing a bit of the journey on the museum. It's kind of notable that probably for the last 7 or 8 months, there's been a nice white sheet over most of the museum, and there's very little that the public can see. But rest assured, underneath there's a lot of work that actually has taken place. And what we'll do is we'll just take you on a bit of the journey of some of the work that's been done, some of the things that have been found, how they've been dealt with, and how the overall project is progressing. So what we will do is probably just take questions at the end, and we'll just go through a little bit of a visual journey on the things that the team have been working through and finding behind the white curtain.
Morena koutou. So I think this is the third presentation we've got, and the first two really focused on the process today, and today we're going to go into a few more of our sort of specific areas of construction. But what we'd like to do is invite the councillors to have a tour of the building in the coming month or so. So we'll work with the governance team around that so we can take you through the building and you can have a look firsthand. So from an overall construction perspective, we're roughly 1/3 of the way through, and we're still tracking towards practical completion sort of September next year. So we've got relatively limited work happening in the basement at the moment. The main thing that's down there at the moment is a lot of scaffolding, which is holding up the building for the rest of the works to be taking place. We've got a big push. So the building's broken into different zones. Zone 1 is the southernmost zone, and then sort of broken into the parapets right through to Zone 6. And so Zone 3 is the central atrium which you work through. So there's a big push of work happening in zones through to Zones 4. It's a little bit hard to see some of the work, but like on the left in November in Zone 2, we've stripped everything out and we've put up scaffolding, and then in the right-hand image in March, you can see there's a lot of new steel that's gone in, a lot of pink framing timber for the walls, and then at the back, there's a lot of structural steel that's formed up the different rooms and platforms.
And I'll just get Will to explain, but one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of scaffolding in the building is that it's actually to take the weight of the building as they do the structural work, and maybe Will can probably just expand on that component of why we put the scaffolding not only in the basement, but also within the building.
Yeah, so as Thomas alluded to, as we take out parts of the structure, that reduces the structural integrity and load-bearing capacity of the building, so we need to put in scaffolding to replace that. And so the scaffolding often starts at the basement, and there are holes drilled through each floor, so it carries right through to the roof, and we have a temporary engineer which sits with under the Watson Hughes contract that makes all of the decisions around when they can and can't transfer load between the scaffolding structure to enable work to be undertaken safely. So here is again in Zone 2, so we're up in the ceiling. In the top left, this was a steel beam that was put into place in the 2011 works, and then when we've taken everything out, we've seen that it's rusted and has twisted, which was unexpected. So in the right-hand photo, we've gone in, we've sandblasted it, and we've coated it and now ensured that that beam will be in good condition moving forward. In the bottom left-hand photo, you can see two different types of timber, so like an older, darker timber and then the lighter, pinker timber. And we've opened that up and the timber has had a lot of decay and is essentially not holding up a roof anymore. So we've gone, which is the darker timber, and so we've gone in and put the lighter timber next to it to provide structural support for the roof tiles and also the whole building. On the right-hand side, we have SHS beams and reed braces that have gone in, which is a shiny steel above the central corridor to hold the roofs together. This shows us the atrium, which is the main entrance in Zone 3. So on the left you can see a relatively intact floor and the two staircases. So we've pulled out the staircases on the right hand side, taken off the concrete topping that was put in about 40 years ago, and you may be able to see the cracks that are running sort of up and down the screen, and they are from historical movement due to the ground nature under the building. So essentially where each of those lines are is where a beam is and a foundation, and those foundations have sunk, and then that's opened up like what looks like a valley crack in the floor, so that we've gone through and poured resin into these cracks, which are also sort of attributed to the different construction techniques, so cold joints through construction in the 1900s. And I think there's 700 litres of epoxy have gone into these cracks, and it's quite amazing. Before you'd walk on the floor and it felt really hollow, and you could sort of hear it when you tapped it with your safety boots, and now the whole structure is tied together. You can't see these cracks from underneath, so they're only visible once we pulled up that topping slab. What's going to happen next is we'll cut in what's called a chase, so a strip every 400 mils, that's 40 mils wide and goes 40 mils deep, and then we lay steel into that and then pour concrete over it. So we go from having an unreinforced concrete slab to a reinforced concrete slab that meets today's specifications. This brings us through to Zone 4, and the picture on your left is where the old education room was, if any of you had been up there. So you go up to the Zone 3 and walk through. So that floor's been taken out, and you can see on the right-hand side the historical wall. So now this is enabling us to do all of the strengthening work before a new floor goes back in, and that education area is re-established. And the picture on your right shows, it's on the other side of Zone 4, but it shows the level of scaffolding that we have in those types of areas to A, hold up the ceiling, and B, enable us to get access up the walls. From an external perspective, we're going through and tidying up a lot of the decay that's occurred on the exterior surface, which is predominantly in the northern side of the building. And like traditionally you'd think we'll remove the timber and we'll replace it with brand new timber, but because the timber has heritage features and in a lot of cases it's a curtain wall, so the timber that you see on the outside actually goes through and forms the framing, the best case is that we scrape out and remove any decay, and then we replace it with epoxy. So on the top left you can see a really big gap, and it's a little bit challenging to see in this light, but on the bottom left that gap has been filled up with timber and epoxy to enable that piece of timber to be structurally sound. This shows us the northern side of a roof. There's a lot of scaffolding and work going on up there. So the scaffolding doesn't touch the building. It spans roughly 30 metres from west to east and is anchored on the ground through foundation weights. And then it has an archway over the building, and all of the scaffolding hangs off and does not touch the building to enable us to not impact the heritage fabric of the building. The roof methodology process was that we removed all of the existing tiles, lifted up the sarking, which I'll show a picture of in a minute, put in any additional blocking work that we required to structurally strengthen the roof frame, and then we put between 1 and 2 layers of structural ply down, which you can see in this photo, and then we moved through to putting in building wrap, which is the blue fabric you can see, and then battens and followed by tiles. So here you can see one of the internal roofs. These photos were both taken earlier in the week at slightly different stages. So on the left-hand side, you can see the ply put in place, and on the right-hand side, sort of metallic in the middle is a tanking waterproofing material to make that gutter area waterproof. And we have clad and painted the walls of the parapet. And then that moves us on to putting down the battens and laying the tiles. It's quite a logistical effort in that everything needs to get craned up onto the roof, and then we need to walk everything through the structure safely, and we have a limit of weight that can go on the scaffolding. So the process is that a worker sort of carries a bundle of tiles and then places them up near the roof, and then someone comes through and puts them in. The pictures on the left-hand side is some of the lead detailings that we're doing. These are a mixture of waterproofing but also architectural value, and you can hopefully appreciate quite a lot of the detail that's gone into that, and it's very time-consuming but particularly important aspect of a heritage fabric of a building. This here shows us a northern-facing dormer. And on the left-hand side, a lot of the work that's going on. So 2 things are happening there. On the left-hand photo, we've got the fibre reinforced symmetrics matrix work, which is the dark grey work you can see at the bottom of the building, which structurally strengthens the wall, and then the general external timber repair that we saw previously. On the right-hand side, this is the same dormer, and this is to illustrate some of the structural issues we're dealing with. So this whole structure, which probably has a width of sort of 12 metres, a height of 15 metres, and extends out between 2 and 10 metres from the building, has no sort of solid timber connection into the building frame. On the right-hand side, what you can see is the rafters of the dormer come down onto a bottom plate, and that bottom plate, which is the piece of timber that runs up the right-hand side piece of roof, is just nailed into the other roofing sarking sheets, and so there's essentially not that much holding it to the building, and so that illustrates some of the work that we're now coming in and ensuring that whole dormer is connected structurally to the building, so if there is an earthquake, that doesn't fall down and cause a hazard. This is also what I talked about before, is all these bits of what's called, so the timber you see on the right, the roofing timber is called sarking, so it's a layer before you put the tiles on. That's all been lifted up at certain intervals, and then we have put in additional framing timber, and in some places, like you can see, replaced it with ply where we cannot keep a new sarking, and then that's where then the ply comes back on top, and then the Adhero building wrap, followed by the battens and followed by the tiles. So that brings me to the end of the presentation if the team have any part-time.
Thanks, Will, and it's wonderful to see what's going on behind the white curtain. Thank you. There's obviously been a lot of progress made, and it's very complex and a lot of moving parts going on there, so thank you for really shining a light on that for us. Any questions, councillors? I just will say for you to note that there was a confidential attachment with this report as well, and we'll ask any questions about that particular part in the confidential section later on, but you're welcome to ask questions about the presentation and the report itself if you'd like to answer. Councillor Brown, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great report, exciting stuff. It's moving fairly quickly. When does the wrap come off the northern end?
So at this stage, the northernmost is scheduled for August, and then the sort of central tower around September, and then that scaffolding and wrap will be moved to the southern end. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see the completed product around September this year.
Awesome, look forward to it. Thanks, Will.
Thank you, Councillor Waru, and then Councillor Patterson.
Tēnā koe te chairman. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Will. Good to see the progress. Just wanted to ask, probably out the gate question, in terms of the materials that are being used, is there any thought to those materials being used maybe for the blue baths or something like that? Are they similar materials?
Different types of structures with different issues, and so I think the blue baths eventually will need an engineering design on how to resolve that. But they are, while they feel the same age, those buildings, they are two different eras, one predates the Napier earthquakes, and the other was partially constructed and then redesigned post the Napier earthquakes, and so they are slightly different.
Oh, right, no, thank you. I thought as much. I just thought I'd ask anyway, see if we could recycle some stuff. Kia ora.
Nice try. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. Great report, by the way. The steel beam that you mentioned had twisted as well as being rusted. Did you rectify the twist?
Yeah, absolutely. So we looked in with the engineer, and what we've put in is we put in additional packing timber to help bring that back into place, but also transfer the load onto the timber if required, so that has been rectified.
Thank you. And subsequent question, just with regards to the pink timber, is that boric treated?
Yeah, it's a certain grade, and the pink basically signifies it has been treated for borer. It's the internal timber treatment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
H1.2, I believe. H1.2, I believe.
Any further questions, councillors? No, that appears to be no more. So yes, you want to add something, Thomas?
Oh no, so just again, look forward to the team taking you through the building. So we do get a lot of requests to go through, but because it is a very busy work site, we can't take everyone through. And also just extending an invite to Laura and the Rotorua Daily Post that we're more than welcome to host them as well and take them through the building if they wish, because I'm sure there's a lot of interest of what's going behind there. So thank you very much.
Awesome. We look forward to that opportunity, councillors, I'm sure. Thank you very much for the report and the invitation. And also just want to note within the report the ongoing reporting that's going to happen. Thank you for setting up the schedule. And I believe in May we're probably looking at a wastewater report, aren't we? And yeah, so just thank you very much for all the work that's been going on. Cheers. Thank you, councillors. I just wanted, before we move on to the next part of our agenda, I just wanted to cover off a couple of the action points from our last meeting. Just to note that you've been provided information around what happens with the plastic wrap that goes around the museum, so you've received an email about that. Also, the picker block question around the DCs, that information has also been provided. Some of the councillors took up the opportunity to go and visit the Blue Baths, which was very interesting. And finally, in response to the fluoridation letter that we sent to the Minister Brown after our last INE meeting, we just received a reply today, and I would like to table that letter for your information, councillors. I'll just read it out for you. Dear Andrew and Karen, fluoridation of Rotorua Lakes Council water supplies, thank you for your letter dated 13th of February 2025 concerning the Director General of Health's direction to Rotorua Lakes Council to fluoridate the Rotorua Central and Rotorua East water supplies. You have requested to have the direction to fluoridate withdrawn until there has been a public inquiry into the safety and effectiveness of community water fluoridation. I also acknowledge your request for me to direct the Director General of Health to pause any proposed legal action in relation to any non-compliance with the direction to fluoridate. In December 2021, the Health Act 1956 was amended to give the Director General of Health the power to direct local authorities to fluoridate drinking water supplies. Given this independent statutory power to direct local authorities to fluoridate sits with the Director General of Health, the matters you raise in your letter are not matters for me to address. Any queries you have in relation to the direction to Rotorua Lakes Council to fluoridate should be directed to the Director General of Health. Thank you, and yours sincerely, Samir Brown. So that letter will be attached to the minutes as a record, and that covers off most of the action points from the last meeting. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just If I may circle back to the conversation we had when we were confirming the minutes, and I sought some clarification at that time in relation to page 8 of our agenda. It was in relation to the notices of motion, and I was actually absent when this particular one unfolded about a month ago. It says here that it was explained the procedure to change the notice of motion according to standing orders. Accordingly, a show of hands was requested to verify other councillors' agreement to proceed with the change. We don't have a record of last week's council meeting. Was there a show of hands requested last week? I don't recall that.
I believe there was, but I will. Yes, I'll leave that to Mr. Keck to run through.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Lee. That process was followed in the same manner as we did in the previous meeting. There was a show of hands, and if I recall, it was a 6-5 to accept the amendment that you had put forward.
Thank you. And did you want to add something, Councillor?
Yes, because also at the time I read out the standing order, and I also mentioned that we'd followed this process at the previous meeting when Councillor O'Brien wished to amend it. So under the standing orders, and I would also mention to you that there had already been an amendment which I'd allowed, but to amend it a further time, so a second time, required us to follow the standing orders in the meeting, which required a vote by a majority of councillors to allow the amendment to come on the table, which is the process that was actually followed.
Thank you for clarifying. I think we'll just leave that matter now. Thank you, Councillor Lee, and we'll move on to the next part of our agenda. Thank you, which is a resolution to move into public excluded. We have 3 items for consideration in public excluded today. The first is the confidential minutes of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting held on the 5th of February. The second is the Rotorua Museum Seismic Strengthening and Restoration Financial Update for February 25. And the third is a variation approval for Rotorua Sewage Scheme Stage 1, Contract 22/038. Consideration has been given to the public interest in these matters, and the officer's advice is that the reasons for confidentiality outweigh the public interest in these matters, and the reason is to carry out commercial activities. Can I have a mover and a seconder to move in? Oh, you've got a question, Councillor? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. I just have a question about the confidentiality part of this meeting and all confidential meetings. When we close the doors and cut the live stream, is this meeting still recorded?
I'll let Mr. Keck or the CE reply to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We are still recording the meeting in order for us to be able to capture minutes accurately.
Fantastic. So what happens to that? The file, where does it go?
You're talking about the video file, just to be clear?
Sorry, Councillor Patterson, I'll have to get back to you on exactly the process from an IT perspective as to what happens to that file and where it's stored.
And just a last question, has this always been the practice?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, ma'am. Just before I vote, could I just say I have a question regarding the Rotorua scheme, but not necessarily aligned with the item as written in the agenda. So with your leniency, I hope that I can ask a question during that period, if it's fine with you.
Thanks for the heads up. We can deal with that in the confidential.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on that note, I'd ask that we have a mover and a seconder that the beg your pardon, that we move into public excluded. Could I have a mover, please? That's Councillor Wadu, seconded by Councillor Wan. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. We'll just allow time for the public